if this'll help anyone. Maybe nobody will believe me, but if I disappear, maybe this record will explain what happened. My name is Thomas Grayson. I'm 42 years old, and just a few months ago I was living what most people would call a normal life. A forgettable condo in Charleston, a low-tier management job at a tech conglomerate called Niche Core Systems, and a rescue cat named Linus. Not exciting, but steady. Everything changed the day I found those files. I wasn't even supposed to see them. A misrouted data migration, a curious file labeled H specs, final, do, not, open. I opened it. What I saw it wasn't just unethical, it was predatory. Niche Core had been harvesting biometric and behavioral data from millions of users, using it to manipulate real-world decisions, relationships, purchases, even suicides. I couldn't let it slide, so I reported it. Anonymous, I thought, but within a week, I was fired. Not just terminated, blacklisted. Overnight, every application I submitted was rejected. Calls went unreturned. Former colleagues avoided me like a disease. My bank account withered. The past due notices piled up. Linus started losing weight from the stress. I was desperate. Then I saw the ad. Night clerk needed. Pine Creek Motel, Hawthorne Hollow, West Virginia. $50. Hour, 11 p.m., 7 a.m. Immediate start. No experience necessary. $50 an hour? No experience? It sounded like bait, but I was drowning. I called. A gravelly voice answered, "You come tonight, 11 sharp. No resume needed." The drive to Hawthorne Hollow took me deep into the old mountain roads, past dead gas stations and hollow-eyed towns. By the time I pulled into the cracked parking lot of the Pine Creek Motel, the sky had turned a deep, bruised purple. The motel looked like something out of a faded postcard, an L-shaped building of 2 dusty stories wrapped around a flickering lot. A neon sign buzzed overhead. P-E-C-E-M, Tel. I parked under one of the few working street lamps and stepped inside the office. The bell over the door let out a sickly chime. The air smelled like cheap pine cleaner and something older, something metallic. At the desk sat a man whose age seemed impossible to guess. His face was all lines and shadow, as though carved from driftwood. He didn't look up. "Help you?" he muttered. "Yeah, Thomas Grayson. I called about the night shift job." He folded his paper. His eyes were pale and watery but sharp. They pinned me in place. "You sure you want it?" I blinked. "2 guess? I mean, I need the work." "Then you start tonight, 11 to 7, 50 an hour, cash. That a problem?" I shook my head, but everything in my gut screamed to leave. "Rules," he said, pulling a yellowed sheet from his coat pocket. "You follow these. Memorize, don't write them down, don't tell anyone. You break a rule, job's over." He handed me the list. The paper was soft with age, like it had passed through many hands. I nodded. "Got it." He grunted. "See you at 11. The door slammed behind him. In my car, I uncrumpled the paper. Rules for night clerk, Pine Creek Motel, Hawthorne Hollow. 1. At exactly 11:15 p.m., turn off the neon sign. Turn it back on at 6:45 a.m. Not before, not after. 2. If the ice machine knocks between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., ignore it. Do not approach. 3. Room 209 is under renovation. If someone asks for it, say it's out of service. If the lights are on, do not investigate. 4. The front office phone rings every night at 3:33 a.m. Answer it. Do not speak. Listen for 66 seconds. Then hang up. 5. If a guest checks in under the name Daniel Ford, give them room 113, regardless of availability. Do not look at their face. 6. The vending machine may dispense non-standard items. If so, dispose of them without touching them directly. 7. At 5:55 a.m., lock yourself in the janitor's closet for exactly 5 minutes. Do not exit early, no matter what you hear. I stared at the page. Some kind of prank, right? A weird hazing for new hires. But something in the old man's eyes, he hadn't been joking. 10:45 p.m. 15 minutes to decide whether I was about to earn rent or enter hell. The lobby was empty when I returned at 11 o'clock. In the old man's place stood a younger guy, early 30s, worn down, heavy-lidded. He looked like he hadn't slept in years. "You the new guy?" he asked, already packing up. "Yeah, Thomas." He didn't respond, just nodded, slung on a backpack, and said over his shoulder, "Good luck." I called out, "Any advice?" He paused. "Yeah, follow the rules." Then he vanished. The silence swallowed the room. I sank behind the reception desk. The rules burned in my brain. I stared at the flickering digits of the clock. When it hit 11:15, I stepped outside and flipped the neon switch. The lot went dark. Only a few amber bulbs lit the second-floor railings. The shadows thickened, and just past room 209, I thought I saw something, a shape shifting behind the curtain. But when I looked again, nothing. Back inside, I tried to relax. There wasn't much to see. A dingy bathroom, a cramped janitor closet, and a back room with a cot. I'd brought a thermos of coffee and an old paperback to pass the time, but I couldn't focus. At 1:28 a.m., a car pulled into the lot. My first guests, a couple, laughing, drunk or maybe just reckless youth. The guy leaned over the desk. "Hey man, you got anything with a view?" I smiled. "Second floor's best for that. Room 212? He nodded, flashing a grin. The girl, though, looked uneasy. "Babe, this place feels weird." I swallowed the panic building in my chest. "It's just quiet. No light pollution. Great for stargazing," I offered. That seemed to settle her nerves. They paid, took the key, and vanished into the dark. Normal. Finally, something normal. Until 2:17 a.m. A faint knock echoed from the lobby. Soft. Measured. It was coming from the ice machine. I froze. The knocking continued, turning into scratching, then pounding. Something or someone was trying to get out. I stared at the door to the lobby, paralyzed. The sound became desperate, like fingernails on frozen steel. Then, a voice, muffled, weeping. "Please, I'm so cold." My breath caught. I pressed my hands to my ears, heart jackhammering. The rules, the damn rules. Ignore it. Don't open it. It went on for 10 minutes. Or 10 hours, I couldn't tell. Time warped in the silence that followed. 2:43 a.m. I nearly cried from relief. I needed distraction. Anything. I moved to the computer behind the desk. The screen was cracked, fractured like broken glass. Dried fluid stained the keyboard. Something dark, brownish red. I leaned in. Blood? Before I could react, the office phone rang. 3:33 a.m. I lifted the receiver with a trembling hand. Just listen, I told myself. Static. Then footsteps. Slow and deliberate. Boards creaking. A door hinge groaning open. Then a voice. Clear. Cold. Close. We've been waiting, Thomas. I slammed my hand over my mouth. You thought you could run? You thought your memory was yours? Then silence. I dropped the phone. Something in the air shifted. A pressure. I ran to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, looked up. The mirror was fogged, but the room wasn't warm. And in the mist, written by an invisible finger, "Remember Thomas." I backed out, nearly tripping over my own feet. Then, at 4:30 a.m., the door creaked open. A man stood there, gaunt, wearing a gray trench coat. "I'm Daniel Ford," he said. My blood froze. I grabbed the key to room 113 with shaking hands and handed it to High Eyes Low. Do not look at their face. As he turned, I glanced just for a second. His reflection in the glass had no face at all, just smooth, pale skin, like wax. He walked away. At 5:30 a.m., the vending machine clunked. Inside the tray, an ornate black box, carved with alien glyphs. I used a clipboard to slide it into a plastic bag. Within seconds, the bag began to hiss and smoke. I dropped it. The floor bubbled. 5:55 a.m. I bolted to the janitor closet and locked the door. For 4 minutes, I heard nothing. Then scraping. Something outside the door was breathing. It growled, low and guttural. The doorknob jiggled. Something heavy slammed into it. Again and again. I curled up in the corner, whimpering. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. 6 a.m. My watch beeped. I waited 10 more seconds, then opened the door. The hallway was empty, but gouged into the wood of the door, deep and jagged, were 3 words. "Stay awake, Thomas." I staggered out of the supply closet, every muscle in my body aching with exhaustion. The air was thick, like something unseen had been pressing down on the entire motel during those last minutes. I leaned against the counter, shaking, eyes darting around the dim lobby. It looked the same as when I arrived, but something had changed. Me. I had changed. I didn't sleep that day. I couldn't. Not with those words still echoing in my head. "We've been waiting for you, Daniel." Yes, Daniel Keller now. Not Michael Brennan. I had to change names after what happened. What's left of me hopes that changing a name might confuse them. At noon, I drove back to my apartment in Charleston in a daze. Pixel meowed anxiously when I opened the door, as if she could smell the motel's lingering dread on me. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faceless man in room 113, the melting plastic, or that mirror whispering, "Remember, Daniel." I should have quit. I should have run. But rent was due in 2 days. My checking account was barely above zero. The guilt of blowing the whistle, losing everything, had cornered me like a starving dog. That night, despite every instinct in my body telling me to flee, I went back. The whispering pines stood exactly as I had left it, silent, worn, and humming with some ancient, invisible force. At 10:59 p.m., I entered the office. No one was there this time. The desk lamp flickered as if unsure whether it should light the way or leave me in darkness. I sat in the chair, my eyes flicking to the neon sign through the front window. 11:15 p.m. crept up like a predator. I stood, walked out, and switched off the sign at exactly 11:15. The moment it went dark, I felt it, like the entire parking lot sighed, a low vibration under my feet. Whispering Pines was awake. Around midnight, the silence turned oppressive, the kind that makes your ears ring. Then came the sound barely audible, the shuffle of bare feet against gravel. I looked up and spotted someone walking along the second-floor walkway. They moved slowly, each step dragging like their feet were too heavy. They passed room 237. The lights inside flickered. They paused at the door, leaned in too close, like their face was kissing the peephole. I stood quickly, about to shout something. But then I remembered the rule. If you see lights on in room 237, do not investigate. The hallway light above the figure buzzed, blinked out. When it came back on, they were gone. I sat back down, cold sweat dripping down my spine. At 1:12 a.m., a man entered the lobby. I hadn't heard a car pull in. He was tall, thin, wearing a long coat despite the June heat. He smelled of mildew and copper. He didn't speak. He didn't blink, just stared at me with pale eyes. "Need a room?" I asked, voice hoarse. He nodded once. I glanced at the available keys and handed him one without thinking. Room 118. He took it, still silent, and turned away. Then he stopped at the door. "He sees you, Daniel," he rasped. "He remembers." He left. I stared at the door for a full 5 minutes before I could breathe again. At 2:03 a.m., the ice machine started knocking again. This time it wasn't polite. It was a frenzy of banging, scraping, and clawing. Something inside wanted out. I plugged my ears with tissue and stared at the security monitor. A glitch rippled across the screen every time the ice machine was hit. The figure from earlier, the one who had stared into room 237, flashed on the monitor. 1 frame, 2 frames, then nothing. I didn't move until the clock hit 4 a.m. and the sound stopped like a switch had been flipped. The phone rang at 3:33 a.m., right on time. I answered, trying to hold the receiver as far from my head as possible. This time, the voice didn't whisper. It screamed, "Daniel Keller, the debt is due." I dropped the phone, but the screaming continued. No, not from the receiver now. From the walls, from inside the vents. The lights flickered rapidly, and shadows danced across the floor like they were alive. I ran to the back room, slammed the door, and waited. After 66 seconds, because somehow I knew it was 66, I opened the door again. The phone was off the hook. The front door of the motel was open, and the words, "He remembers," were scrawled on every window in dripping red. I cleaned them off as best I could, not because I thought it mattered, but because if I didn't do something with my hands, I was going to scream. At 5:23 a.m., a child showed up, alone. She couldn't have been older than 7. Dirty blonde hair, white nightgown, barefoot. She walked through the front door and stared at me with wide gray eyes. "I'm looking for my brother," she whispered. "He said he'd meet me here." "No children," I muttered. "No children are allowed in this motel." She didn't move. "Do you know where room 237 is?" she asked. I froze. It It's under renovation, I said automatically. It's always under renovation. Her eyes turned from gray to pitch black in a blink. Liar. She vanished. Just gone. Like someone had flipped a switch and deleted her from reality. The vending machine clunked. I didn't want to look, but I had to. Inside was a roll of film, black and white, unmarked. I didn't touch it. I used tongs from the supply closet to scoop it into a glass jar. The second I sealed it, the power went out. Total darkness. Then, a laugh. Low, wet, like something gurgling on blood. From behind the desk, I slammed my back into the wall, holding the jar like a weapon. Then, just as suddenly, the lights returned. The clock read 5:54 a.m. I threw myself into the supply closet, locking the door. This time, it didn't wait long. There was something breathing on the other side. Loud, raspy. Then came the scratching. Nails on wood. The handle turned slowly, stopping with a click every time it tried to twist fully. I checked my watch. 5:57. I whispered to myself, "Don't come out early, no matter what you hear." Then I heard my mother's voice. Soft. Sweet. "Danny, open the door, baby. It's cold out here. She's been dead for 10 years. I screamed silently, biting down so hard on my tongue that I tasted blood. When the clock ticked over to 6 o'clock, the voice stopped. When 6:02 hit, I unlocked the door. No one was there. Just a trail of wet footprints leading from the closet to the vending machine, then vanishing completely. I don't know how many more nights I can do this, but I'll be back. Because I think something is starting to remember me too. The third night felt different, not just heavier, smarter. As if the motel had learned my patterns, adapted its methods. When I stepped out of my car, the air smelled like burnt hair and copper. I paused under the flickering lot light, staring at the second-floor walkway where I had seen the dragging figure the night before. It was empty, but the shadows still moved, like they knew I was watching. Pixel tried to follow me out of the car this time. She had never done that before. "Not tonight, girl," I whispered, gently pushing her back. "You don't belong in there." When I entered the lobby, I found something waiting for me on the front desk. A Polaroid, faded, creaked with age. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a photo of me, sleeping, in the supply closet. Someone or something had been watching. I almost ran. Almost. But there was nowhere to run to. This wasn't just about the motel anymore. Something had reached through the cracks and touched me, marked me. 11:15 p.m. came. I turned off the neon sign. No hesitation this time. That buzzing glow had begun to feel like a lie, anyway like a mask pretending to be normalcy. The moment the sign died, I heard it. A single knock. Not from the office. From every room. All at once. Thud. 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 The entire motel was knocking. The cameras flickered. Every screen showed static, except one. Room 113. Inside, the faceless man sat cross-legged on the bed, holding the same Polaroid I had just found. He tilted his head. Slowly. Unnaturally. Like a puppet with tangled strings. Then he smiled. No mouth. Just a smile, stretching across smooth, skin-covered teeth. I cut the power to the monitors. At 12:33 a.m., the floor behind the front desk began to thump like something alive was underneath, trying to dig up and out. The tiles cracked. A low growl seeped through the fracture. I grabbed the fire extinguisher and stood back, ready to swing. But nothing emerged. Then the room temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the windows. My breath fogged in the air, and across the glass of the lobby door, words etched themselves into the ice. "He's coming home." I turned around and saw a man standing in the hallway outside the office. It was me, wearing the exact clothes I had on the day I was fired from East Corp. He looked tired, broken, but his eyes were glassy and wrong, like they weren't his anymore. Or mine. He spoke. "You shouldn't have opened the mirror." I blinked and he was gone. Behind me, the lobby mirror began to hum. I had covered it with a sheet on night one. The sheet was now gone. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and images played across it like a movie reel. Faces I didn't know, screaming, burning, laughing, then my own faces surrounded by them, whispering, "Daniel, Daniel, Daniel." I backed away until I hit the vending machine. Another clunk, another offering. This time, a motel room key. Room 237. I didn't touch it, but I didn't throw it away either. It stayed there, taunting me. At 2:17 a.m., I heard a child crying outside. Not screaming, not calling for help, just sobbing. I looked out the window and saw the little girl in the white gown again, but this time, her hands were covering her face. Blood ran between her fingers. Her sobs shook the air. And slowly, she turned toward me. I closed the blinds before I saw her face. But I saw enough. Where her eyes had been, there were clocks. Ticking. Fast. Too fast. By 3 a.m., the phone rang again. I didn't answer. I had unplugged it hours earlier. It still rang. The ringing got louder and louder, until it wasn't a ring anymore, it was a shriek. Mechanical, angry, furious. I smashed the phone against the wall. It didn't stop. Then something whispered directly into my ear. "You'll stay, Daniel. You'll stay and remember." The room around me stretched, warped. The floor melted into hallway tiles. The air turned green, thick like syrup. The walls pulsed. And then I wasn't in the lobby anymore. I was inside room 113, standing in front of the bed. The man without a face stood across from me, holding something in his hands. My file, my resume, my photo ID. He reached out, offered it to me. "Accept it," he gurgled. "Accept who you are." I shook my head. He tilted his own and the skin of his face began to ripple, rearranging, until it was my face. Now I was looking at myself again. "Everything you ran from is here," he said. "Everything you forgot. Welcome home." I closed my eyes and screamed. When I opened them, I was in the supply closet again. 6 a.m. The door creaked open by itself. Sunlight poured in. Pixel was sitting at the threshold, waiting. I stood up. Every bone in my body ached like it had been twisted and bent during the night. I walked out, took a breath. The motel was quiet again, but I knew it was just asleep, just waiting. I quit that morning. Told the owners the job wasn't for me. They didn't ask why. Their eyes just followed me like they knew I wouldn't be gone for long. And maybe I won't. because something's still with me. The mirror in my apartment now reflects things that aren't there. Pixel won't enter my bedroom anymore. And every night at 3:33 a.m., my phone rings